There's significant evidence indicating that student learning outcomes can be improved through the provision of formative assessment. In response to this evidence, various researchers have developed feedback models. I framed my literature review around the model developed by Nicol and Macfarlane-Dick. Nicol and Macfarlane-Dick developed a model of self-regulated learning and proposed the following 7 principles of good feedback practice to support and develop self-regulation in learners. My literature review is focused on the first 6 principles, as these principles are student-centred. Each of these principles is discussed in detail on the following slides. Criteria and standards-based assessment models are increasingly being adopted by universities. Concerningly, however, there is evidence showing that students often do not understand the criteria against which they are being assessed. This means that the benefits of such models will not be realised unless teachers can find ways of making criteria understandable to students. One way of doing this is to provide students with rubrics containing statements that describe assessment criteria and standards that define different levels of achievement. In addition to providing rubrics, some teachers also choose to discuss assessment criteria in class to make sure that they are fully understood by students. The use of exemplars containing examples of both high and low quality work has also been shown to be effective in clarifying goals and standards. A further strategy involves engaging students in peer review. I discuss in my literature review a recent study of engineering students who were involved in a 2-stage peer review process. Students in that study reported that receiving reviews from other students helped highlight specific areas for improvement, and that reviewing another student's work resulted in their reflecting back on their own work to improve. Teachers need to create opportunities for self-monitoring and the judging of the progression to goals. Tasks and activities that encourage reflection on learning progress are an effective way of achieving this. This was illustrated in a study of students' experiences with criteria referenced self-assessment. Students in this study reported finding that careful self-assessment helped them do better work and get better grades. In another study, linguistics students were required to write a formative non-graded essay. Tutors gave detailed written comments and individually discussed feedback with students. A second graded assignment was then completed. The study found that students used the feedback from the non-graded essay to take action and devise strategies to improve their graded assignment. This indicates that formative assessment can enhance self-regulated learning. It is important to engage students in both identifying criteria and standards that will apply to their work and in making judgments about how their work relates to these standards. Providing students with opportunities to evaluate and provide feedback on each other's work has been shown to be an effective way of achieving this. Recent studies have found that through reviewing the work of peers, students can learn to take control over their own learning, to generate their own feedback, and be more critical about their own work. Furthermore, students have reported that performing a peer review of another student's work brings into view new perspectives on their own work that might not become available through received feedback. Nicol and Macfarlane-Dick define good quality external feedback as information that helps students troubleshoot their own performance and self-correct. Various research studies have shown that students are critical of poorly framed feedback. For example, students are critical of what they consider to be vague and ambiguous feedback and express a preference for instructional and directive feedback. Students express dissatisfaction on receiving comments indicating that they could have developed certain areas in an assignment that had a word limit without guidance about parts that could have been omitted in order to explore other areas in more detail. Students also noted that where poor marks are awarded, a specific example of what the student has done wrong and an example of how it can be corrected should be provided. Researchers found that students perceive feedback to be more effective when it is clear that the teachers had thought about what they had written. Surface level feedback, for example, relating to compliance with an expected assignment format, is considered less useful as it is frequently relevant only to the immediate assessment task. Another strategy that has been found by various research studies to be effective is to ensure that feedback focuses on offering corrective advice and that it offers some praise alongside constructive criticism. Finally, ensuring that feedback is provided in a timely manner has been reinforced by numerous recent studies. For external feedback to be effective, it must be understood and internalised by the student. Yet there is a great deal of evidence that students do not understand the feedback given. In order to increase effectiveness of external feedback, Nicola Macfarlane-Dick recommend that feedback be given as part of a two-way dialogue. Staff in numerous studies have recognised that one-on-one meetings can improve the effectiveness of feedback and report that feedback without dialogue often creates frustration and disengagement. Students have reported that such an opportunity is a luxury that very few are afforded. Students have also reported the benefits of sharing feedback with peers, and some researchers have suggested that students be encouraged to discuss tutor feedback within small groups, either as part of a formal learning session or informally. Peer discussion is another important source of external feedback. The advantages of peer discussion are numerous and include the fact that students who have just learned something are often better able to explain it to their classmates than teachers, and that peer discussion allows students to construct new knowledge and meaning through negotiation. Teachers can have an effect on student motivation and self-esteem. Nicola Macfarlane-Dick assert that praising effort and strategic behaviours and focusing students through feedback on learning goals leads to higher achievement than praising ability or intelligence. Students in a recent study described such feedback as acknowledging achievements and recognising effort invested irrespective of grade given. They reported that such feedback gave them encouragement and insisted in maintaining their confidence and engagement. Students who did not do as well as they hoped on an assignment reported that encouraging comments increased their level of motivation and willingness to persist. Additionally, the study reported that students appreciated teachers using a considerate tone when making critical comments. Feedback through peer review has been found to have an impact on motivation. Recent research in relation to peer review found that the opportunity for students to redraft their own proposals after giving and receiving peer review comments improved motivational levels. Additionally, some students also reported the motivational effect from reviewing the work of others. It's important to note that feedback can have a detrimental impact on motivation and self-esteem, and researchers found that giving negative or critical feedback to less successful students can demotivate and further discourage those low-achieving students. Closing the performance gap is about supporting students while engaged in the production of a piece of work and providing opportunities to repeat the task performance external feedback cycle. Various researchers assert that unless students are able to use the feedback to produce improved work, it is not possible to know whether feedback has been effective. This concept is referred to as feed-forward, whereby the intention is to guide students to deploy feedback from one assignment in subsequent assignments, hence encouraging student learning. The importance of feed-forward is reinforced in a recent study where students reported feedback needs to explain where they can improve in the future. One participant noted that feedback needs to be provided so you can actually make a change. If you can't make a change from what's provided, then it's useless. Such experiences were mirrored in another study where students reported their perception of the main purpose of feedback as being something that helps you do better in the next piece of work, giving you a push in the right direction. The use of peer review processes is also an effective way to close the performance gap, as it allows students to directly use the feedback they receive on draft assignments to improve their final submission. Providing feedback on work in progress is a further strategy to close the performance gap, and studies have shown that the opportunity for immediate use of feedback by students is seen positively. Where students are given feedback on drafts, they report feeling motivated to engage with and use the feedback. A number of teachers report on having implemented multi-step assignments into their programs to assist in closing the performance gap. As an example, one recent study discusses a group project in an engineering faculty which involves the submission firstly of a single-page statement of intention, followed by a short oral presentation, and and then a final report. In summary, the provision of quality feedback on formative assessment in a higher education context is a complex process which requires careful consideration of multiple dimensions. As educators, we need to be mindful when providing feedback to ensure that it has the desired positive impact on student learning.